So let's move ahead with an example because that will clarify what we're trying to do here. So this is an example from the book. We look at a 20-year endowment policy, which is purchased by a life age 50. We've got level premiums that are payable annually throughout the term of the policy. And we've got the sum insured equal to 500,000, payable at the end of the year of death or at the end of the term, whichever is sooner. And the term is 20 years because I've got a 20-year endowment policy. So first of all, I need to show that the annual net premium calculated using actuarial equivalence is 15,000 something. And then the next question is, the next question is essentially calculate the policy value at time 10 and calculate the policy value at time 11. In both cases, just before the premium due at time t is paid. That's what I mentioned on the previous sheet as well. The convention is typically that we will include the premium payable at time t. We will include that in the policy value calculated at time t. Okay. So if you got a question like this about policy value calculation, typically you first have to start with calculating the premium on the contract. If the premium is not given, you will first of all have to calculate the premium because this premium is an ingredient that you need when calculating the policy values. Yeah? So here it's broken down into two steps. So we'll start with calculating the premium P. So we have here a 20-year endowment policy issued to 50. We've got level annual premiums payable throughout the term. So our actuarial equivalence relation is like this. And this is something that you should be able to understand by now. On the right-hand side, you see the EPV at time 0 of an endowment insurance for 20 years issued to a 50-year-old. The sum insured is 500,000 euro. And on the left-hand side of the equation, you see the EPV at time 0 of a level premium P, so constant premium P, that is payable throughout 20 years, right? And again, this is issued to a 50-year-old. So if I calculate the P from this equation, I can put in, if I have my table with the actuarial present values of certain products listed, I can do the numerical evaluation and I indeed retrieve a P in this particular case of 15,000 something. Yeah? So the numerical answer doesn't matter too much at this point for us. It's more about understanding the reasoning. So this is my P calculated via actuarial equivalence. We call this once again the level premium because it's a constant premium payable throughout the term of our insurance contract. So what we're now going to do is we're going to put ourselves at time 10 and at time 11. And we're going to ask ourselves, if the policy is still into force at time 10 or at time 11, what would be then the present value of the future cash flow streams in that setting, right? So let's do that. Let's put ourselves at time 10. And I'm going to do it via the hard way and the long way. That means I'm going to start with explicitly writing down the future loss random variable at time 10. And then afterwards, I'm going to calculate the expected value of this random variable L. If you're very good with this chapter, right, then you can skip this first step and you can immediately just write down the expected value if I'm asking you to calculate a policy value. But first of all, we're going to do it the long way. So what are we asking ourselves? What is the present value of the future net loss 10 years after the policy was purchased? We're going to assume that the policyholder is still alive at that time, because if my policyholder would be dead by that time, I do not have to hold any capital for this particular policy. I do not have to add anything to my balance sheet for this particular policy. But if the policyholder is still alive, I still have obligations towards my policyholder, and I need to make sure that I hold enough capital, that I have enough assets to fulfill these liabilities into the future. So if we put ourselves at time 10, then we look at the cash that will go from the company to the policyholder, and we look at the cash that will flow from the policyholder to the insurance company. So regarding the first part, what is going on is I still have this endowment insurance, but at time t, my policyholder now reached age 60. And the remaining duration of the endowment contract that I'm offering is 10 years, right? Because I put myself at time t, and my original policy duration was 20 years. So I have a remaining duration of 10 years. So if I write down the random variable that represents the present value of the death benefit in this endowment insurance, then I need to work with v to the power, the minimum of k60 plus 1 and 10, because this is what I recognize as the present value random variable in the endowment insurance issued to a 60-year-old with a remaining duration of 10 years. The sum insured is still 500,000 euros. So this is my obligation towards my policyholder valued at time 10. If I look at what will be the premiums that my policyholder is going to pay into the future, well, my policyholder is 60 years old. He will or she will pay a premium P at time 10, at time 11, 12, and so on. And the last premium is payable at age 69, right? If the policyholder is still alive at that time. So what I need to value is what I need to use. And I forgot once again an actuarial angle over here, so that's not good. I should put an actuarial angle on top of this. So what I need here is the present value of an annuity due issued to a 60-year-old with a remaining duration of 10 years, right? So also note that it's K60 plus 1, and the plus 1 is not part of the subscript, but it's really a plus 1, right? It's really K60 plus 1 as we've been using it earlier on. If I do the same for time point 11, reasoning is very simple, but now my policyholder is 61 years old and the remaining duration is 9, right? So very sorry, but I'm missing the actuarial angle over here, so I will correct it right after the class is finished today. What happens if we're going to calculate the expected values? Well, we know how to do that because it relies on the actuarial valuation as we've been discussing it so far. So I get then in my first line 500,000 times the EPV of a 10-year endowment insurance issued to a 60-year-old minus P times the EPV of an annuity due issued to a 60-year-old with duration 10. And here I've got something similar, but now my policyholder is 61 years old and the remaining duration is 9 years. I can do the numerical calculations and I retrieve the following values. So that means for a policyholder who is still alive at time 10, I will need as an insurance company an amount of 119,000 euros something in order to be able to fulfill my liabilities in the future, right? And I do take into account in this valuation exercise that there are still 10 years of premiums equal to P to be paid by my policyholder to my insurance company, okay? And then the same at time point 11. So this is what we're gonna do. These are the so-called policy values at time 10 and at time 11. Now, what happens here? Where is this capital coming from? Where is this amount of money coming from? So let's take a moment to reflect on that. Well, if you think about what we did in chapter 6, if we used the actuarial equivalence principle there to calculate the premium, then at time 0, we were imposing an equality between the EPV of the benefits and the EPV of the premiums. So that means at time 0, the expected value of our loss random variable, the L0, is equal to 0, which also means that the policy value at time 0 is 0, right? Because at time 0, under actuarial equivalence, we impose an equivalence between the benefits and the premiums, right? But as soon as we leave time 0, that equivalence will be broken. and that equivalence will no longer hold. So what is, in this case, for instance, if you put yourself at time 10, what is then my financial position? Well, like we already said, if the policyholder died before time 10, there are no future liabilities, so the policy value is 0. But if the policyholder is alive at time 10, then I should hold, as an insurance company, at least 119,339 euros in order to be in line, in order to be compliant with the promises that I made to my client. So together with the future benefits that I will receive from time point 10 on to the death of the policyholder or the end of the policy contract, together with the future premiums, this policy value with the future premiums is expected to provide the future benefits, is expected to give me enough capital to be able to fulfill my liabilities, at least in terms of expected values. Yeah? So where is this capital coming from? So at time 0, my future premiums are expected to be sufficient in terms of expected values to pay for the future benefits and the future expenses, if any. But at time t, the future premiums are not expected to be sufficient to pay for the future benefits and expenses. That's why I'm ending up with a policy value at time t that is taking a positive value, right? If the policy value is positive, it means that I should hold this extra capital so that together with the premiums to be received, I have enough money to pay for my future benefits and expenses. So we will build up assets during the course of the policy so that we build up this capital, this policy value that we need to hold as an insurance company at time t. And how does that work for the particular example that we were covering in exercise 7.1? Well, in exercise 7.1, we have a level premium. That means that the premium is flat, it's constant, and we have an increasing level of risk, right? Because by growing older, the risk of having to pay our death benefit will increase, right? So if you look at this particular exercise, and if you look at the premium versus the EPV of the benefits in a particular year, well, then you will notice the following pattern. So if I look at the expression here at the left-hand side, I've got my 500,000 times the discount factor over 1 year times Q50. Now, what does that expression capture? Well, that is exactly the EPV of the benefits, which I promise in the first year of my endowment insurance contract. So this is the EPV of a term insurance policy, with an insured amount of 500,000 that would pay at the end of the first year if death happens in that particular year. So in fact, in this first year, I'm charging a cover that is worth, in terms of EPV, 492 euros. That's what I offer in the first year of this contract. But in reality, I charge a premium equal to 15,114 for this cover. That's the premium that is charged in the first year of my contract. So here you see that I'm creating a surplus because I let my policyholder pay more premium than the benefit is worth in this first year of the contract. So I'm building up an asset which will grow towards my policy value at any point in time t. So also in later years, this holds for my endowment product, for my endowment insurance, which is essentially a term insurance in the first years of the contract, right? So in later years, we also have that the 1 year death benefit cover is worth 500,000 times V times Q50 plus T. That's the 1 year cover that I'm offering. And that is the value, the EPV of such a one-year term insurance issued to a 50+T-year-old with a sum insured of 500,000 euros. And you see that again, this is smaller than the actual premium P that I'm receiving. So I'm building up a surplus. But what happens in the last year of my contract? Well, in the very last year of my contract, that's between T is 19 and T is 20, because I'm having here a endowment insurance contract, I know that in any case, death or survival of my policyholder, I will have to pay the 500,000 euro at time 20. So if I value this at time point 19, then I'm facing an EPV worth 500,000 times V, and that is 467,000 something. But the premium P that I'm charging at, or that I'm receiving at time 19, is equal to this 15,000 something. So here we see that my premium is way below the EPV of the cover that I'm offering in the final year of the contract, right? So that is why I need my policy value, because if the policyholder is still alive at time point 19, I will need to rely on this policy value, on this capital, in order to be able to fulfill my liabilities in the future. And this policy value, that's what I am building up throughout the course of the policy by charging in the beginning of the contract a premium that is too much, and by building up this surplus until the end of the contract, in this case, the point where I need to rely on my capital that I build up in order to be able to fulfill my liabilities. So if you look here at the surplus in this endowment insurance, we see that the surplus in the first years is positive, but the surplus in the last year, because there in case of death or survival, I will have to pay my sum insured to my policyholder if the policyholder is still alive at time 19, right? So there I see that I've got this negative surplus. Yeah. So the crucial message here is that in the endowment insurance context, we're charging a premium in the beginning that is too high for the benefit that we're offering. And this allows us to build up a surplus, and we'll need this capital for those contracts where the policyholder is really surviving towards the end of the contract, and for which we need to have this capital in terms of the policy value to be able to fulfill our liabilities in the future. This is the surplus visualized for an endowment insurance. This is what you would get for a term insurance. So once again, for the term insurance, if you would do the maths, you will see that in the beginning, you charge a premium that is too high for the benefit that you're offering. So once again, you're building up a surplus. What is different with the endowment insurance, that here at a certain point, this contract or this building up is going to flip, so that you'll see that in later years of the contract, you're charging a premium that is not sufficient for the benefit that you're offering. So there you will really need this capital booked on your balance sheet in order to be able to fulfill your future liabilities towards your policyholder.